Hey everyone. Normally I would have some sort of notes scripted out, but I kind of wanted to go off script a little bit here because I've just started the first cohort of my private ADHD coaching. As I've started to work with the members and started to dig into some of their challenges, it reminded me of my own ADHD diagnosis a few years ago and what I wish I knew when I first got told that I had ADHD. So I wanted to make a video for people who have just been diagnosed with adult ADHD. So for those people who are new here, my name's Chris. I am a creator with ADHD and I help fellow busy brains learn the tools to finally get shit done in their life. So a lot of us end up on a very similar sort of path when it comes to ADHD. You start to pick up on how your brain is working and then you start to hear about this ADHD thing that people are talking about. And as you look into it, you start to recognize it more, but then you get that initial self-doubt of, oh, maybe I'm just overreacting. Maybe I'm imagining it, or people make you question it. And because we're already in a vulnerable position, we can start to second guess ourselves. So when it comes to actually getting an ADHD diagnosis, we can often go through a weird kind of denial phase afterwards. So at first we can feel like we finally understand ourselves, but we can go through different phases. We can almost go through like the phases of grief when we first get our diagnosis, and we can go through anger. We can be angry at our parents for not pursuing a diagnosis, or anger that it took so long to get a diagnosis. We can go through fear of having to live a different life to the way that we've been living it, fear of not knowing who to tell or how to tell people. It can come with some self-loathing where we can beat ourselves up about having ADHD. And it can come with some guilt when we look back and think of times when ADHD has clearly impacted maybe relationships that we've been in, and we can feel guilty for not knowing about it at the time and not doing something about it at the time. So I think one of the first things that I wish I knew when I first got my ADHD diagnosis is the most important thing is to let go of the blame. ADHD has enough challenges by itself, but processing and letting go the blame and the shame that we can feel of having ADHD is one of the key things that I wish I knew at the time. I understand it can take time to get used to the whole idea of having this label for the way that your brain works, but just remember that your brain has always worked like this. Now you just have a label to assign to it. It's just a name. But there's no shame in having ADHD. It actually is very underdiagnosed, despite what a lot of people say. It's underdiagnosed. And it's important to recognize this because even though there are millions of people out there with ADHD, there are actually even more that don't have an official diagnosis. So this is actually a lot more common than you think. It can feel embarrassing at times, but I've noticed that the more that I've spoken about it and the more that I've admitted it openly, the more it diffuses any weirdness when it comes to people. Once we own this part of ourselves, it becomes a lot easier to be able to simply move forward with it. It's nothing to be ashamed of, and it's also not your fault. It's no one's fault. And ultimately, this is just the way that our brain works. The next thing that I wish I knew when I first got my diagnosis is that you can start to live a better life right now. The way that I think about it is that so many people in this world live without knowing how they tick, how their brain works. And with ADHD, we've got the closest thing to having a roadmap for it. Some people live their entire lives not knowing and not admitting what they like, what they don't like, what stresses them out. They never take the time to figure out how their mind works. With ADHD, we actually have a roadmap, a blueprint of sorts to help us figure that out, to help us learn how to work with our brain. And if that's not an advantage in some way, then I don't know what is. And in having that roadmap for our brain, it means that we're actually able to start moving in a better direction. We don't need to fight against the tide anymore. So years ago when I got my diagnosis, I wish somebody had sat me down and told me and said, look, now you have a chance to be able to learn more about your brain and start to live a better life now. The next thing that I wish that I had been told when I got my ADHD diagnosis is you don't need to feel like you have to tell people. You can tell people, loved ones, friends, family, but don't ever feel like you have to. Like I mentioned in the point earlier about shame, ADHD is not something to be ashamed of, but also don't feel like you are under pressure to tell your boss, tell your family members. This is between you and your doctor. This is not something that anyone else has to know if you don't feel comfortable doing it. You're not obliged to tell anyone if you don't feel comfortable to. So again, you don't need to be ashamed of it, but you also don't have to tell people. And if you do choose to, take the time to figure it out in your own space and time. Don't let anyone put pressure on you or try and ease it out of you. The next thing that I wish that I knew when I first got my ADHD diagnosis is that we can have big emotions. ADHD comes with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of challenges, but a lot of high points. And one of these is having big emotions. Emotional regulation challenges is part of ADHD. So we can have very high highs, but we can have pretty low lows as well. As you're learning the way that your brain works, make sure you're taking the time to understand and process the emotions around ADHD and how to be more in control of them. This is a really crucial skill, and it's something that I wish that I'd learned way earlier on in my journey. One huge thing that I wish that I'd known is that you don't have to let anyone make you feel bad about looking into medication. There unfortunately is still a big social stigma about medication. There's a lot of misinformation about ADHD medication and what it does, doesn't do. Don't let any single person make you feel bad about looking into it. It's very common for people with ADHD to seek medication for it from their doctors. Medication is part of the equation of managing ADHD, as well as things like therapy and ADHD coaching, but don't let anyone make you feel bad about looking into it. It's perfectly normal, it's perfectly safe, and ultimately this is your body, your brain, and a choice that you get to make by yourself. It's not anyone else's choice. The next thing that I think is important when it comes to an ADHD diagnosis is that ADHD is often an explanation, but it's never an excuse. So when it comes to the challenges of ADHD and learning the way that our brain works, the things that we do, the mistakes we make, and the failures that we have sometimes, they can be explained by ADHD, but ADHD is never an excuse. ADHD should never be used as an excuse for any behaviors that you have. So if you've hurt someone, ultimately we are still adults and we still have responsibilities. So pointing the finger of blame or sidestepping responsibility because of ADHD is no excuse. Yes, we have challenges, but ultimately it's in our control to do something with those challenges, to take responsibility for making sure that we create systems and learn skills and tools. As human beings and as adults, we should always be looking to grow as much as we can. So there is no excuse to not always be looking to figure out better ways, better systems, better tools to help manage and navigate the challenges of ADHD. That's our responsibility, no one else's. One thing that I wish that somebody had told me is that ADHD makes you way more creative. We actually get really incredible bonuses with ADHD. We have these secret problem-solving skills that I wish that somebody had pointed out earlier on. The problem is that we can look at the negatives of ADHD a lot, but the reality is that we have a lot of extra tools in our tool belt compared to neurotypical people. And one of those things is problem solving and creativity. And it's really important to recognize those strengths so that we can learn how to lean into them best. Another thing is that ADHD is different for everyone. Yes, we have similar challenges, but ultimately we are still different people. There are different people within the group of ADHD. There's different types of ADHD. So your ADHD challenges may be different from somebody else's ADHD challenges. So it's really important to make sure that we're recognizing the full spectrum of ADHD and not treating it as a monolith and not treating it as one single symptom that is applicable to everyone. And for the last thing that I wish that I'd learned is that there is way more support out there than you first realize. Getting an ADHD diagnosis can feel like a really lonely experience, and feeling like you are very different from everyone else around you, and that there aren't going to be people that truly understand what you're going through and the problems that you face and the challenges that you have. But the reality is that there is way more support out there than you realize. There's a huge neurodiversity community out there. There's other ADHDers, there's therapists, psychiatrists, coaches. There is a huge breadth of support out there. You just need to find it. So make sure that you're finding the community that you feel comfortable in and the people that you connect with. And if you do want to learn more tools and be part of a bigger ADHD community and be one of our Ultra Normal members, then make sure you join us on our free Focus Bootcamp, where I show you the system that's helped me and the other Ultra Normal members learn to thrive with their ADHD. I'll drop a link in the description down below. So let me know in the comments below, what questions do you have? If you just received your ADHD diagnosis, what questions do you have? What things are you worried about? What things do you not know about ADHD or the challenges in life yet? Thank you as always for watching. If you're interested in learning more about ADHD, there's plenty more videos that you can link to on my channel. And with that, guys, I will see you in the next video.